Welcome to Robert Craig's 15th in a series of virtual tastings, hosted by Elton Slone, with special guest Scott Johnson, Director of Consumer Sales and Hospitality. Today's tasting is a Grateful Craigsgiving, with the 2017 Howell Mountain Zinfandel from Black Sears, the 2018 Howell Mountain Zinfandel, the 2017 Coach of Craig Howell Mountain, and the 2018 Coach of Craig. We hope you enjoyed today's tasting. If you'd like to taste alongside Elton, these wines are available on our website at robertcraig.com.
Oh, Marianne Nugent. Hi, Marianne. And Paul Brandow, right on. Paul, welcome aboard. Rick and Christy Denup, great to see you. Robert Brown, Robert Kramer, Steve McCullough. Oh, Ty Hansen. Hey, Ty. Oh, my goodness. I was looking at old photos of you and Candy today. Steve McCullough. Steve, great to have you on. Wayne Rector. That is a blast from the past, too. And William Witcher. Well, we're officially pretty much sold out of yet another webinar at Robert Craig without even having any Cabernet on. So I'm excited to have everybody in for this Thanksgiving feast here. All right. Well, we got a whole load of attendees, and I'm going to get right into it because we only have an hour. Today, I thought I would introduce my special guest, Scott Johnson, here next to me, who has been our wine club manager at Robert Craig here now for a year and is getting ready to move up. And we're going to move Jamie into her own business. So Jamie Castro up above, who's been managing our direct-to-consumer sales for the last 3 years. But for everybody who's on, and, you know, I thought, my goodness, we're not doing Cabernet for Thanksgiving, so nobody may sign on. I couldn't have been more wrong because we make great Zinfandel and great Syrah, and those are two of the wines that are best with Thanksgiving, with your Thanksgiving feast. So we've taken a little break while the summertime weather, while the great weather was on, and now we're back we're going to do a virtual webinar for every month in the cold weather months, unless I've had, too much of a heater one week and need a little bit more of a break. But Scott and I are coming to you from our new tasting salon, and Jamie is coming to you from somewhere on the west side of Napa. But I'm really looking forward. We wanted to do for Thanksgiving these wines. 17 and 18 are just tremendous examples of what these vineyards can give us. Even though it's before on our vineyard on Candlestick, it's still managed by Walsh, who was excellent. But the Black Sears vineyard was managed by Pete Richmond, who is one of the best farmers in all of the business. So without further ado, let me get you guys started with a little Howell Mountain feel now that we're approaching the holiday season. We are rolling up the front driveway here at Robert Craig, and if you haven't been to the mountain, you're missing one of the great experiences in all of Napa Valley. Where the order that we're going to go in with the wines, we're going to do 2017, then 2018, Zinfandel, and then Syrah. So 2017 Black Sears Vineyard Zinfandel first, 2018 Black Sears Vineyard Zinfandel second, then Cote de Craig, we're going to do 17 first, and then 18. So that is the order. And Scott and I are warming up with a little bit of this Gaps Crown Chardonnay, which I can't believe it. We just released it and we're almost out, but which is very strange. And we're not due to release the 2020 until sometime like more than a year from now. But since I'm always out of money, we might just sneak that. We might just sneak that up a little bit. So here's your front gate to Howell Mountain, which is where all the wines we're going to have come from today. And let me just say this, here's a holiday toast to the gang, and Scott, to you. So a look at our beautiful winery as you're facing to the west and a little bit to the south on Howell Mountain. This is the same direction going up the lane. You can see how beautiful those vines look. Right next door to us to the right-hand side where the rows go a different direction. That's Larry Turley's Rattlesnake Ridge Zinfandel Vineyard. And then behind us, about where you're situated looking at the screen, is his Dragon Vineyard. So this is a view from the other side, looking back the opposite direction. And you can see our rows there in the foreground, and then Larry's rows are off to the left. That is his Rattlesnake Ridge vineyard there, almost in the middle left. And then in the far back of the picture, that is Dragon Vineyard down below. And then on the other side of Larry's property on your far left, that is a really good shot of Black Sears Vineyard, which is, I feel, the greatest Zinfandel vineyard on the planet Earth. It's really amazing to have them as a neighbor. So here's a little, this is what we've been up to lately at Robert Craig. Joe Exotic took his kitty cat out for a little Halloween fun just recently. I think, I may take to the mullet and the mustache full time because that was quite a treat. But I know Joe's been dealing with prison and cancer, so I wanted to send him out a little shout out to him and all his cats, just in case they had something going. So if Shelley's watching this, I know she'll probably murder me for putting this on. But this is what's happening in the world of Robert Craig Winery World Headquarters. This was a shot I took we were a month late getting out of this damn place. I didn't realize what 20 years of accumulated stuff I had. I had whiskey bottles, I had birthday and Christmas cards and everything else, holiday cards in my drawers. And we ended up, taking it to a very expensive shredder, which Carlos, I think, just dumped it all into a trash can and lit it on fire at the end of this. But I had like tax returns and everything else. But now we've gone from there to, ta-da, our new place on 2nd Street here. We just got a Robert Craig Winery sign on it. This is where Scott and I are seated now. And I already know it's a lot more busy because we keep having people try to get in the locked door while we're doing the webinar today. So I think just 2 days ago, we had 10 walk-ins, which is about 8 more than we had all year last year in the salon. So this is a shot of the room where we just had the floors done, where Scott and I are sitting. We, of course, due to COVID, the old furniture is still there, but the rest of it will be on its way. So Scott and I are seated at that table you see in front of you. And check it out. Silicon Valley Bank was our first official meet and greet. And then all the guys from Silverado Farming, Pete Richmond, consulting winemaker Keith Emerson, his lovely lady, and my partners from California or from Canada made it out for this just a couple of months ago. So it was a great kickoff to a little soul in the tasting room. But if you're around, the salon is warm and welcoming. Here's where we're all going to hang out. That's Sarah Allen, who has done a lot of design work for Opus One and many other great properties in the Napa Valley. And she's doing our interior and exterior design. But if anybody's ever been to Saint-Tropez in the summertime or in the fall, it's one of the most gorgeous spaces there is on the planet. And if you've ever had the opportunity to sit on one of those bricked outdoor terraces and enjoy a glass of wine and some beautiful food, that's the idea that we're going to have here. To make the things better, look at that. I got my first payment on insurance after a year from Chubb, 500 grand. My bank wouldn't let me just go cash it. I was going to cash that thing and have it all put in a suitcase and put that baby on my arm and go in. But they wouldn't let me do it. So we had to deposit it to the account. We owe a lot of people money anyway, but that's fantastic. And harvest, check it out. Here's my boy Scott pouring the interns, Harley and Davis, and Jason a little champagne when the last lot was pressed off a couple weeks ago. Look at that face. So here is Jason Price, who took over winemaking from Stephen Tebb in 2018, and Keith Emerson, who's been with us as a consultant on the right side since 2005. And look at the color. This is Merlot from 2021 from Howell Mountain. So we're going to have another Merlot webinar coming up. But look at that color. I mean, this is not even fully fermented yet. This has not spent any time concentrating in barrel. That is as dark as my soul right there. That is as black a wine. 2021, I was expecting, 120 tons off our 2 Howell Mountain properties, and we got 55. So to say it was a nightmare economically is an understatement, especially after the fact we got pretty much zero 2020 wine, but the quality is insanely high. So here's just doing some basic aeration and pump over activity at the winery, and you can see the color and smell. And now barreling down some of these wines, moving some wine into barrel. I tell you, if you've never been to Napa Valley or to Howell Mountain during harvest, you must come out. And then here is a woman that's near and dear to my heart and to Scott's heart and all of us here at Robert Craig. I was just saying to myself, gosh, during COVID, we haven't had anybody leave. And after managing our direct-to-consumer sales in the best way possible, Jamie has really taken the wheel and provided us with a lot of architecture for success here at Robert Craig. And there she is looking all fresh on one of her first days in the tasting room. And she's leaving to start her own real estate business. So she will be brokering before founding her company. And I cannot recommend anybody any more highly. So Jamie, we'll leave a pile of your cards here for the first month and that's it. But Jamie's going to be with us on special projects for some time to come, which brings me to Scott Johnson. Scott, check you out. Look at him above the clouds on Howell Mountain talking to our friends from Kansas City. That's Brian, I believe, and his beautiful wife, Katrina, and the wave. And there, you always look so serious. But which brings us to, if anybody wants to come up and help us make wine, you get sprayed in the face while you're cleaning out glops from the drain. I just love this. He's just spraying them down. Well, Casey's there. That's just fantastic. I can't get enough of that. Casey's on the ground with his hand in the drain, scooping out grape, and that's the times he decides he's gonna spray off the deal. But that brings us to Black Sears Vineyard. So I'll stop now. And oh my God, that just makes me want to cry. And let's start if you're not already on 2017 Zinfandel, let's get started. Isn't that a trip down memory lane, Jamie? So
it's awesome.
So Jamie is going to be manning the chat as well as the Q&A, and she'll stop Scott and I if at any time, I should have done this with Scott and I on totally different screens. I didn't realize how much hair he has compared to me at this point in our careers. This was really a bad call for me to do this at the same time. Well, cheers, everybody.
Cheers, fellas.
So, Scott, I had other winemakers vying to get on, but we're at a major transition here at Robert Craig. So, for my special guest this time, I wanted to have Scott Johnson come on and just have a conversation with me and introduce him to you guys. Jamie's, she's not gone forever. She's still going to be doing special stuff for us and helping us with the architecture of our entire direct sales community, which is pretty much all of our sales at Robert Craig in the near future. But Scott, do you come from Indiana as well, or are you a native Napan? Is it true?
I am a native Napan.
So
better or worse.
You were born here.
Drinking wine since the womb. Yep.
Well, what was the first great bottle of wine you had?
Carlo Rossi Chablis out of a gallon, $6 with the little loop at the top, putting your pinky through, resting it on the shoulder.
I said great wine. What was the first wine you had that made you think maybe I'll do this, for a living?
I've had some family members that grew up working in the business. I'm a third generation Napa kid, and my aunt and uncle used to manage the Chimney Rock golf course way back when. And when that transitioned into the winery, that was one memorable wine, some old Stag's Leap District Chimney Rock Cabernet Sauvignon. And shortly after that, their son got involved with BV, Beaulieu Vineyards, and we used to get an actual a bottle of George III for our birth year vintages. So I've had, fortunately, several of those wines over the course of time. And that was one of those initial seeds that was planted ultimately.
That's awesome. Scott has worked for Flora Springs, which is now yet another winery that's been taken over by a Bordeaux concern. And also, I think most of your career was formed at Stag's Leap, or not at in Stag's Leap, at Clos de Val Winery, Bernard Portet's old place. And, you know, what would you say the biggest difference to you is in mountain wine versus valley floor wine?
I joke with Elton that I'm going to steal his joke and say that I don't eat off the floor. So
why drink off the floor, right? T-shirt coming soon to a boutique near you. Well, I just, like I said, I mean, I drink, there's all kinds, and where, you know, Jamie used to work for Frog's Leap, and a very fine winery, and I've always enjoyed their Zinfandel. And I mean, gosh, I've had some old Clos de Val Zinfandels that have held up really well over the years, but there is only one Black Sears. I mean, my favorite wines, Zinfandel-wise, are from Monterraso Vineyard in Sonoma, which I think Robert Bialy makes a beautiful one of those. They're most known for black chicken, kind of like we are for Affinity, but I don't think it's their best wine. But I love that Monterraso Zinfandel. You know, I love the Ridge Zinfandels, Lytton Springs and Geyserville, sort of their two classics. Larry Turley's wines up there next to us are pretty amazing. The Dragon, I am, you know, I'm not a fan of this, you know, Amador Foothills or Southern California produced Zins. I mean, I love the Howell Mountain wines, and also Outpost next to us and Lambourne, that's still made by Heidi Barrett. Though they're selling their vineyard right now, and are just absolutely magnificent examples of Zin. But I'm going to go into screen share, and we'll talk about this 17 Vineyard Zinfandel. And here you have, so again, this is farmed by Pete Richmond, our farmer now, who farms, you know, a Lotus and Hershey for, you know, for Dana and many of the other cult Cabernet properties. And you can see what kind of loving care this is taken. It's called a head-trained vine, where all of the canes are pruned up, and you want the fruit to sit in these little baskets of dappled light. So these vines were planted in 75. Some of these were planted in the 50s by Jerry Sears and his wife Joyce Black. So Larry Turley's vineyard is on the left-hand side of this photo. Over the tree line is Larry Turley's vineyard, and our vineyard is immediately on the other side of that. So if you're a decent golfer, you could hit 2 7-irons and be in our vineyard. It's really only about 300 yards from, you know, where this photograph is taken. So here's Jerry, just one of the great guys of all time. When I started, you know, when I first asked about getting a Zinfandel, we finally got our first vintage in 2006. And if anybody still has any of that in their cellar, it's just an insane wine. I mean, I would maybe think about knocking my own mom down if she tried to get a glass out of my hand of that, if she came up behind me suddenly, because it's just, I used to go to Jerry and say, hey, Jerry, do you think I could get 5 tons of your Zin or 4 tons? And he'd always say, and you are, you know, and I'd be like, I'm your neighbor, man. Come on, you can give me some of that juice. So, and here's Joyce Black, who is still with us, thank goodness. But they're just two of the most incredible, lovely people. Now here, for those of you that were on the webinar that I did with Chris Chambois, who married their daughter, Ashley Sears, this is the photo that he literally sent me when I said, do you have a photo of yourself that you could send? And he sends this as his Zinfandel photo, which I have to have it in every one. So here's Chris and Ashley, who are great neighbors. Yeah, they have some of the greatest, if you're a fan, they have some of the greatest weed in all of the Napa Valley, growing in these bright red soils here. And you can see this is that sort of basalt series soil that is in our winery property, first and foremost, which is to the right of this. And then our Candlestick vineyard, which is to the left or north along this ridge line. You can see they've replanted this huge section of Zinfandel with brand new Cabernet Sauvignon plantings. So in 2018, which there was smoke infection on Howell Mountain, all the Zinfandel up here on these blocks was unaffected, whereas their Cabernet blocks down low, they couldn't even use. So we're fortunate that our Cabernet blocks are in the same elevation, and it saved our vintage for 2018. Here's a beautiful shot of, you know, only in Howell Mountain do you get this real severe temperature change. The vines can go fully dormant in the wintertime, and it helps them rest up. So this is dry farmed, biodynamic, organic, though they say it's dry farmed. I don't know why they need all that drip hose in there. But I'll ask Ashley about that and Chris some other time. But at any rate, Pete probably talked him into putting it in there, and he did it under cover of darkness. But that you're looking out over Pope Valley, and you can see, like our vineyard, it's above the fog on Howell Mountain. So we'll transition next to our vineyard. But this is what makes Howell Mountain wine incredible: is you have this inversion layer. The AVA starts at 1,400 feet. So it's cooler during the day, up there about 12 degrees cooler than the valley floor. So you get a nice, even ripening curve. And then it does not get as cold at night. So you get this non-photosynthetic development of the skins, the seeds, the stems, called lignification. And that leads to having, even though these wines have a tremendous amount of tannin due to high skin to juice ratio, the wines don't continue to develop sugar at night. The tannins simply ripen. So these big tannic wines, whether the Zinfandel's even tannic, and our Syrah, they get this beautiful supple feel, and they're very long-lived. So, oh my God, when I have this wine, there's just nothing that has this kind of spice component. And 17 to me was way underrated as a vintage, like 2015. I sat down with Antonio Galoni a few weeks ago, and I had sent him the 15 when it was a real honor for him to choose our wine to represent the Howell Mountain AVA in his virtual tour series this summer, and said, send me anything from 13 to 18. So I sent him 15, which he only gave us a 93 plus on. And when I saw him, he said, you sent me that wine on purpose, right? I said, well, yeah. And he said, wow, he goes, I was amazed. I think I may have undervalued that wine. So in any event, it was the 15 wines, like 17 were very tight and tannic vintage when it started. And now they're opening up. And I think they're going to be pretty much like 88 Bordeaux, like 96 Bordeaux. They may not have all of the press of 1989 and 2000. Bordeaux, but oh my gosh, they are just such spectacular years, and the wines are finally unfolding and starting to show themselves. So 17 and 18 are both drought years, though 18 a little less so. We got more rain in the spring, but both, in the mountains, 18 was a very small vintage. It was maybe, barely average, whereas on the valley floor, it was 20 to 30% over in yield. So let's try these 17 and 18s right now.
Elton, I have a comment and a question for you. Is now a good time?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, first of all, David Harrington just mentioned that he has both the Turley and the Ridge Geyserville, but he thinks the Black Sears is the best, which, thank you, David. We appreciate
Such intelligence. Absolute sign of intelligence.
And then Jim Freeman actually had a question. He wanted to know if you could compare the Robert Craig Black Sears Zin to the Black Sears Zin that's made by, Ashley and Chris.
That's a great question. Jim, I can only imagine what your school teachers must have thought of you as a precocious kid in like the 8th grade. You always had these very involved questions on my email, and I think I'm going to have to go and get my, enological cookbook out before making any answers, or phone a friend or call the winemaker at the very least. Well, that's an excellent question. The main difference between, it used to be called where Ashley and Chris are making their wine, his father used to be in a partnership with Mike Beatty, who has his own Beatty Ranch vineyard. And then they would supplement it with fruit from Black Sears, and they called it Howell Mountain Vineyards. And then it was bought by the Chow family, and eventually that brand was either sold off or dissolved. So now Mike Beatty still has Beatty Ranch, one of the founders of the Howell Mountain AVA, old vines, beautiful place. And Ashley and Chris Jambois, Ashley Sears and Chris Jambois were married. And they decided they wanted to make a run at the family business. And Thomas Rivers Brown, the famous winemaker, we may be the only wine that he does not make on Howell Mountain. But he consults with a good many projects, extremely talented guy. And he produces their wine. And if you know Thomas Rivers Brown, as Mike Dunn accused him of doing. He gets everything very ripe and then tends to water it back. And at our winery, everything is pretty much just what the fruit gives us. So we just don't get things as ripe. So I would say the Black Sear style is riper than the Robert Craig style, just by the nature of their winemaker. So they harvest it a little bit later. And we start harvest usually when the fruit's around, 25.5. Back in the day when I started at Craig, we were making an Amador County Zin. And I think that was usually like 33 degrees bricks or something insane. That was like having a port half the time. But with Black Sears and our wine, that is, I think, the primary difference. So all these annoying customers keep calling in. Anything else? I did notice that Brad Gray, I saw a comment come in from him, and Brad, thank you very much. It was so good to see you, and it was great seeing you up there, seeing the Grays up on the mountain. And like I said, my scarf is a treasured possession. So what do you think? Let's have a little 18, and hopefully you guys have it side by side.
Elton, Joan and Bob Brown also wanted to know if you had any comments about the 2013 vintage.
Yes, the 2013 vintage. If you're having one of those, my advice is to turn all the lights off in the house and drink it in the bathroom and put your cars in the garage so that nobody will stop by and be like, oh, what wine are you having? I wouldn't mind a glass. The key is to drink that one completely on your own. 13 was a terrific vintage on Howell Mountain. And those wines, I just had a 2010 with our truffle dinner the other night at Poggio, one of our favorite bistros. And oh my gosh, these wines are so ageable. When our first vintage of 06, I barely saved any for the library, which was just a huge mistake. You'll notice if you leave these wines, if you just cork it and put it in the refrigerator and then let it come up to temperature the next day, you'll notice that they are totally impervious to oxygen decay. It's just an amazing facet of these Zinfandels. So what do you like better, Scott? Are you 17 or 18?
I got to jump into this 18.
The 18 just has this really intense flesh, whereas the 17 to me is all about the structure. I mean, it's just really, they're two very different wines. The 18 up there was just like a really lush, tremendous year. And then it just was just such a bummer to get, and we lost, half of our crop or more to smoke taint. And then what we ended up producing, of course, we got scores in the mid 90s, whereas many of our neighbors were given the major ding into the 70s from Bologna. But we have property that is, frankly, it's up above the smoke zone. So everything on the lower blocks had to be sold off in bulk. And if you really want to see a grown man cry, just watch me when I have thousands of gallons of wine that cost me $90 a gallon to produce, and I have to sell it for $40 a gallon. That'll give you an idea. That's when the weeping starts. Anybody out there? I'd love to hear your comments in the chat or in the Q&A if what you guys think. It's hard. I don't know. I thought 17 was going to be my winner because I've been having that wine more lately. But this 18 is just it's a powerhouse. So Scott, what is the best thing? What to you, when you take people up on Howell Mountain, what do you think is the best facet of showing them the winery? Is it the wines, the view?
I think to be completely honest, growing up here, it's always been, to me, this is an extension of my lifestyle. It's one of many reasons why I've had the opportunity, I should say, chose the opportunity to work here. But seeing this experience through our guests' eyes and connecting all those dots of wine quality and the setting up there all around a table with a great bottle of wine, it's just hard to beat that. It's hard to top it when you're on top of the world. It's all downhill from the Craig, like I've said to many of you up there enjoying the view.
That's right. Every time I get attitude from one of our more highly priced, lower elevation neighbors, I always remind them that every time we flush our toilet, we irrigate your vines. at Robert Craig. So, oh my gosh, I just love great Zinfandel. So I realize that this is not a, Cabernet is always the big draw, like an instant sellout, but I was so happy. I was so pleased to see that we sold this out and that you guys responded. Because so many people take Robert Craig wines and put them in the cellar. Like I just got a whole bunch of shipments like everybody else. I see Paul Brandau's voting for the 18. I mean, it's a hard wine not to love, right? I thought I was going to be 17 all the way. But, I get all these wine shipments and I take them straight to the warehouse in Napa so that I have no way to get all cocktailed up during Monday night or football or whatever, or as Shelley calls it, every night football. But the temptation is just to put them away. And even though these are young wines, it's great to have like a lush vintage like 18 and a vintage that is all about structure and is more tight and restrained like 17. It's really interesting to Zinfandel. There's something about it. The wine is so thin-skinned.
Which one with Thanksgiving?
Which one with Thanksgiving?
Both.
It's not an either or situation.
If anybody here has visited the tasting room or the salon in the last probably about 8 months, Jamie, I think you can probably confirm that too. You've had the 17 Zinfandel recently, but the 18 is what we made as an alternative or an addition on the recent shipment. This is beautiful. 18's jumping out the glass.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. Like literally Black Sears lost all of their Cabernet. They did not produce an 18 vintage due to smoke taint. And the Zinfandel is totally unaffected. There's not one molecule. The two bad ones that you look for before you pay any fruit invoice are, glycol and 4-methyl glycol. And there was neither. 4 micrograms a liter, which is a minuscule amount, is the amount that you can detect. And there was 0 in these wines. So it's so nice. And same with our estate Cabernet is, even though we're on Howe Mountain, we had a terrific vintage in both Cabernet and Zinfandel, although it was not a terrific vintage as far as our finances were concerned, since we had to sell so much fruit off at a loss, or so many gallons off at a loss. But in any event, I love these wines. I love the Zinfandel. And we're going to take a pause, enjoy these wines. And because we use all DM corks now as well, there's less oxygen exchange going on with the DM. And so, I used to say decanter, that's for fussy people. But with our wines now, if you have a decanter, it really helps to get a little oxygen in the wine and release the aromatic and help the mouthfeel kind of evolve a little bit. But I don't, my favorite Zinfandels in the world, this is certainly one of them. And Zinfandel does not have to be an overwrought, super jammy American oak deal. This is all, French oak. It sees about 18 months in wood, and about 50% of that is new. We actually use Burgundy barrels. We use a lot of Ramon barrels on this wine, and it really produces this gorgeous wine. I did see an American oak barrel in the winery. There's one from a good producer, and I said to Jason, like, "Hey man, what's going on with this?" And he's like, "Elton, I'm just trying one out," because he knows I love America, but I do not like American oak. So we'll see, Jason. I can see Jason popped onto the webinar. So Jason, the word is out. I saw that barrel up there, and I was like, "What is going on? I better not see a major invoice for any of that." But French oak is considerably more expensive for those of you that don't buy oak and work at a winery or pay the bills at one on a regular basis. So you can get a really good American barrel for probably $600 a barrel, and almost all of the French wood that we use is in the $1,200 a barrel range. So it is expensive. And the only good thing about the fires of 2020 was we didn't use about 2/3 of the wood that we had purchased. So the at least the oak bills, I don't have anybody saying, "Elton, when is this invoice going to be paid this year?" So maintenant. I digress. Anything else coming in on the chat, Jamie, that I should know about?
Yeah, we've had some really great comments. It's actually really fun to see because I feel like it's really split between 17 and 18 as far as what are people's favorites. David Harrington had mentioned that he felt like the 17 was more drinkable now and knows that the 18 will develop, with a little bit more time. And then Andy Nichols was saying that to me he felt like the 17 had more savory characteristics, whereas the 2018
Agreed.
was a little bit more fruit driven. So it's kind of all the more reason, like you said, drink them both with Thanksgiving dinner, right? You get a little bit of everything that's needed and that you want in your beautiful glass of wine.
But again, these are to be opened after the guests are already in their cars while you're cleaning up.
There you go.
And what else, Jamie?
No, that's that. I think that kind of covers it. You read that Jim Freeman had asked which one with Thanksgiving dinner, and we answered that. So
All right,
yeah.
all right.
Paul Brandau said, "Yep, they're drinking both for Thanksgiving." So
There you go.
woo-hoo.
Well, and Jamie's husband Scott, who's such a tremendous musician, he is out on business right now, so we don't get any 2017 or 2018 play-in music. But
What the heck?
yeah, I know.
He has a life of his own.
I call BS on that.
Me too. We'll get him on the
Okay.
next one.
It is time to pay homage to my love of Cote Rôtie, and we're going to open up we're going to start with the 17 Côte de Craig, which our Syrah vines we had. These are all Alban clones. So let me go to share screen again. So here we are. This is the view from the winery for those of you who haven't been there. And you can see all of that burned out stuff down below. It's not as depressing as it was a few months ago, but none of this is grown on the traditional winery estate vineyard where most people come to visit. This is grown all the way on the north end at our Candlestick Ridge vineyard, which we purchased from Duckhorn in 2015. And this is a great shot because this vineyard has been ripped 3 times. So it was produced, I can't remember, somebody was using it to make wine for vinegar. And so they originally planted it to a vineyard before Duckhorn had it. And then Duckhorn, I know that their CEO replanted it completely in 95, 96. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking his name? Alex Ryan. And what's interesting is on one of my very first trips to California, I came out and Alex took us to the Candlestick Vineyard when I was working in distribution for National Wine and Spirits, and he showed us how to do a bench graft. So a very talented guy who I'm sure became very wealthy when Duckhorn went public recently. He survived the transition from GI Partners to the next private equity consumer-facing group that purchased it. But this is the 3rd time this vineyard has been ripped. And look at the size of these boulders on the side of the road. So this was in early 2015 when I was thinking, maybe we'll get away with this for like $55,000 an acre, because on Valley Floor it's about $35,000 an acre to replant. Then these rocks started coming out, and when all was said and done, it was like $110,000 an acre to replant these 13 acres. So if you want to know what it's like to have tight underwear for about 5 years, just look at these rocks. Here's a good shot in the 2018 vintage of Jason up there. And you can see there's smoke all around and sitting down, but it's nice and windy up at the stick. And he's chomping on some grapes up there. That's a good shot of Jason Price, winemaker up there. And you can see it gets thick down low, but up where we are, it's nice and clear. And this is a terrific shot of the vineyard from overhead, where if you look, I don't know, like mid-picture where the 2 roads are intersecting down at the back of the photo near the woods, that is right where the Syrah and the Grenache are grown, again, from Alban clone. So, again, it's my love of Côte Rôtie. I call this Côte de Craig. because it's literally the steep hill of the Craig. So it's not like Côte du Rhône, where it's a larger possession. It's a wine of the Rhône. This is our small possession. That's why it's a DE. If anybody's a French teacher, you'll back me up on that. But I just wanted to make something that is similar to the great wines from the roasted slope there. We had Jack Edwards on not long ago that produces some of my favorite wines from this area. So you can see at the intersection again of the lanes down in the lower right-hand corner of the picture, that is where the Syrah is. And just across the lane from the Syrah is the Grenache as you go up that hill right in front of the terraces. Oh man. It's so cool this wine, it just has that Candlestick, like Howell Mountain has a spice to it. You know, the wines all have kind of a ground white pepper and this sense of rock in place to them. And it's like no other wines. When I first started selling wine at National Wine and Spirits, I started with them in 1988 or 1989. And I just remember that was before La Joda was purchased by the Jackson family way back in the day. And Chateau Voltner was still up there, you know, making Chardonnay. So I can't believe they're still not in business because they were making Chardonnay on the Ladera property at the time, and it was French style. But the wines from Howell Mountain, oh my God, Beringer Bancroft Ranch, Howell Mountain Merlot, these wines have always just had something to say to me like at no other place in the valley. And that's why when it came time to invest my life savings and a good portion of my partner's life savings up there when they hadn't even seen it, Candlestick is where we bought, and what a vineyard this is. I'm so glad Stephen Tebb gave you this gift because I wanted to tear this out and replant it all with Cabernet because it's such a pain in the ass to farm these sections of the vineyard. And he convinced me to keep this little 1 acre plot of Syrah and of Grenache. And so we only make, I think it's like 90 to 120 cases of this, depending on the vintage. And I wish it could be less expensive than $90. I know for California Syrah, that's getting up there. But at the same time, you know, it is, I think, one of the finest examples of Syrah that exists. I used to love Isley Vineyard until that went to $350 a bottle. So I'm still on their Cabernet mailing list, but I refuse to buy the Syrah for that. See, to me, this 17, it has the power. It has the power. I got to go get us another glass to do a side by side. I'll be right back. Scott, entertain the people with your thoughts.
Love it. I don't know how many of you, it looks like there's a lot of familiar names on here that I've actually hosted up at the mountain, but this is a wine I've been pouring typically when walking around because I'm obsessed with this. You don't find wines like this in Napa all too often. And this is a beautiful Thanksgiving wine to explore if you're curious about some alternatives that may be a little less common at the table, certainly from Napa Valley.
Pass me some 18. I'm going to do the 18 side by side with this. It's just so fascinating to me. And what Scott has to say is true. I knew we would forfeit some dollars and some sales, but what I really wanted to do with these two wines at Robert Craig, because the people that have come to us as customers, as you all are first and foremost Cabernet people, that's what we do here is mountain Cabernet, but these wines are so versatile and so spectacular with food. You know, I mentioned that 2010 that we had with our truffle dinner from, you know, it's white truffles from Alba and this spectacular homemade egg noodle pasta with it. And that 2010 Zinfandel, I mean, I got to tell you, everybody voted for that over the Vietti Castiglione Barolo that night, and of the same vintage. And it was just showing, it was just so crazy great. And so these wines like the Côte de Craig, I wish we had enough to send out and do one of these with the 2015, which was our first try from the vineyard. And because the wine has just become larger and more perfumed. It reminds me of drinking, you know, La Chapelle from Jabolet or something. I mean, it's really an intense experience. So I would urge you guys that love this wine to make sure you get a little bit. We're selling out of this at about, I think it takes about 6 months. We don't even really do a release letter. It just comes out in the newsletter, and people come up and try it one time, and then that's it. Scott can tell you, it's like, I want some of that. I want some of that Côte de Craig.
It'll be on my table.
Sorry, Scott, didn't mean to interrupt, but we have another really great question from Peter Warner. So Peter was wanting to know what the difference is between the stick and Côte de Craig. And he also was just inquiring a little bit more about some information about the stick, like wanting to know, is it an annual release? Maybe you can touch on that.
Pete and Igda, hello there in Virginia. It's great to see you on here again. Some of my people didn't load. Gosh, I've got Jason Guerrero's on. This is so cool, you guys. I love seeing, I feel like I'm on here with my family every time. Well, Pete, the stick is Cabernet based. That's Bordeaux based. So Cabernet Sauvignon with a good dash of Merlot and Malbec in it. And then this wine is, it's, supposed to be about 70-30 Syrah True Grenache. But in the most recent years, like 17 and 18, it's almost 50-50 Syrah and Grenache. So because we are right now cutting back a lot of those Syrah vines, and some of them were damaged in the fire. So it got really hot right down in that woodsy section that I was showing you earlier. So we might have to, I'm going to have to go down and beg John Albin for some cuttings from his vineyard again, because, if any of you have had his Riza Syrah or that stuff that he's making down in Paso, it's extraordinary wine. And of course, that's why American Syrah is, $250 or $280 a bottle or whatever he's getting for it now. But this clone seems to do so well there that I don't want to do anything else. So this is straight up Côte Rôtie. It's an homage to Syrah, though this year it's got that sort of, that bacon fat, grilled bacon fat, that leather, that spice, that iron in it. And, even while it has that brightness and that pepperiness of the, of the Grenache in the wine as well. So I'm always amazed at how expressive this is. And these wines seem to line up with the Zinfandel. The 17 is really structured and a little bit tight. The 18, I don't know which one of these is going to live longer, though. The 17 is still really tight. It needs a whip and a chair, whereas the 18 is really forward and lush and gorgeous. I mean, man, it doesn't. I always say it doesn't always have to be Pinot Noir with Russian River Pinot Noir with Turkey or Gewürztraminer or Riesling. I mean, these wines are just going to be glorious with ham, with turkey, with tofurkey. What is the tofu turkey?
Nailed it.
Got it.
I know. Shelley's turning me more and more into a vegetarian against my wishes, but she follows all the animals on Instagram, and so I'm victimized in my food lovings over the holidays. But this does well with vegetarian dishes as well. We might just have one giant eggplant parmesan for Thanksgiving. I have no idea, though I do have a turkey coming.
Good for you.
In which this would also work quite well for anybody doing an eggplant parmesan.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very true. So Jim Freeman actually was adding to Peter Warner's question and wanted to know if we're still making Robert's Block.
Well, yes, we are. But
And we're selling out of it quickly, which is why we don't make a big deal out of it sometimes, huh?
yeah, we don't even do a release at Robert's Block. The wine it's such a pain in the ass in so many ways. But Scott has introduced us all to the Corvin at Robert Craig. That's Scott's great contribution. I'm like, gosh, we're using so much less wine because I was, open like 8 bottles of wine for 4 people and then managed to drink it all and then hang out up on the mountain before driving down the hill to a big lunch. I'd say, why are our samples so high? But Corvin, Scott's been able to introduce people to it, and now it's just a slugfest. I mean, but I can only produce it in years. 14 was the only year that we made it from 2 barrels, whereas every other year we made the first vintage was 2010. We skipped 11 because we only make it in the best years. We made a 12, a 13, a 14, and a 15, all awesome years. No 16, no 17, no 18, but there will be a 19, and then there will not be a 20 or a 21 because we just have too small amount of wine. So it's like 1 barrel out of the 10 barrels that come from blocks 1 and 2 up there, which as you cruise up the driveway, it's on your right-hand side. It's the stuff that borders Larry Turley's property, and it's on one solid sheet of rock. I mean, it is pure white tufa, which most of that soil is that Basalt Series red soil. And it just, it's not a reserve wine. It's just the wine that is most expensive for us to make. And by the time we engrave a bottle, put it in that Hermes glass, and we're going to lighter bottles at Robert Craig to save the environment, because I think it's important, and probably dropping the capsule because I think we're at a point with the planet where we have to do something. But that bottle is always going to be unapologetically ridiculous because I just love that wine. And when it comes out, it's 1 barrel, and you either get it or you don't, or you just dream about it. So, we have a little bit of the 15, which is by far I think the best Roberts block we've ever produced. And if you want some, we're down to our final few bottles of that. I know that. And then there won't be another one until the 19 vintage.
Thanks, Elton.
Certainly. Well, Scott, let me ask you another question. What annoys you the most about Jamie as a boss?
Oh, I'm dying to hear the answer on this one.
Oh my gosh.
What are you going to change immediately at Robert Craig? What do you yeah. I'm here to help, Jamie. I'm here to help. So Scott, in the coming years, what do you hope to have the customers experience that come to Robert Craig?
I think we have an opportunity to pick up from what you and Jamie and the team has helped to create here, and kind of move us into a new generation with a higher level of experience, with a better dedication to timeliness in terms of shipments. As you all know, it's so complicated adjusting for all of us as consumers purchasing anything online in the last 18 months. Jamie and I have learned a tremendous amount from this. And I think it's really peeled back a lot of the opportunities for us to grow from these experiences. We are shipping a luxury product that we're very proud of, and we want this to arrive in the best possible quality. And quite frankly, I know we do a great job with our experience, and we're always going to push the envelope with that and do our best to provide you with something that extends beyond the life of the bottle, because we know once that's gone, it's gone, and you've just got this memory. Or if you're like us and you drink enough wine to where you forget, perhaps it's a different discussion we have to have about retention. But it's really this improvement on our communication and our kind of expectations that we have, providing you with a great service from grape all the way to glass. And that shipping piece that Jamie and I have worked to exhaustion, that's something we really are looking at improving moving forward.
Well, I give you guys an A+ because it started this year with the first great ice storm of 2020 to the FedEx facility in Nashville. And that really kind of reset the entire bar for lousy service from FedEx, UPS. We've dropped Golden State overnight, which was Rachel's favorite carrier, because some of those guys look like they had been on a methamphetamine bender for a few days and then happened to show up with your wine. So we went for more serious tracking, more temperature control. But it has been an interesting time, to say the least, where customer service in that regard has dropped from the major carriers, just as things are really picking up. But thank you all so much. I saw somebody chime in. I just saw a question pop up that said, how long can the wine survive in Corvin? And Scott, I'll let you handle that question as well. Though now, because we have DM corks, they reseal around that hole and prevent the argon from getting out. So much better than with traditional cork. But Scott, I'll let you handle that question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think if you're reading just like the basic product description, we do have the Model 3 units available if anybody's looking to pick one of those up for the holidays. You can also, of course, explore their website. They have a bunch of different tiers of devices that just include different accessories and whatnot, different finishes and things of that nature. But functionally, they all work the same way. If you're reading the description on the website, they will say that the device is going to preserve. We're talking about the needle system that punctures through the cork of a closed bottle, not the new variations that they have now. They will say it will last up to 1 year. I've done some experiments with winemakers when I first started in the business, and sometimes it works up to 1 year. In a blind tasting, purely anecdotal, we were able to really kind of, walk away with some pretty curious insights that were impressive, but I don't have that much faith personally, even having the great DM cork enclosures, that really 6 to 8 months, which is far longer than what most US wine consumers really need. When in my household, it's really just getting it to next week as like an ideal long range goal. So 6 to 8 months, I would say, is a very realistic expectation. But of course, if it really just gets you from A to B, a couple weeks, maybe if you're sampling something prior to going to a restaurant, or I don't know if you have a family friend with a great wine cellar that you want to sneak into that cellar while they're busy in the kitchen and snag a couple samples, they'll never know you were there.
They will fit. They will fit in the well of the commode, behind the commode. I just want you to know, in case you need a quick one while your wife thinks you're just having water while you're watching football on a Thursday night, say. But just for those of you out there that might have that as a challenge. Well, let me go. We're at the end of our time, but let me share screen one more time to kind of take you through the beauty of Candlestick. You can see now, even now, as when I went up here on a beautiful day in the winter with Scott and Jamie to show them Candlestick, and we were all first together as a company. And I just want you to notice, see how these are not these arms that go out like that, which is called Cordon Pruning. This is all cane prune, which is ungodly expensive to do because you want every vine to contain its own load with fruit. So this is what it looks like when it's cane prune. So these are not going out into these long cross arms where every vine gets the same haircut. In this way, you can determine how much fruit each individual vine is going to carry. And that is a major difference with Robert Craig wine. Here are an example of the tiny bunches of fruit that we're getting on Howell Mountain from the Syrah section of the vineyard, which is the final one that's cordon pruned, because my God, we get zero fruit from that section. I just remember looking at the crop this year as it was going through veraison as right here and thinking, I'm going to be poor. So this is what we have, Alban clone on 110R, rootstock 110R does very well on rocky soil. Here's the Grenache just above it, also Alban clone. And you can see as you go down this lane, the Syrah is on your left-hand side, right as this lane meets the other lane. And the Grenache is the first section going up the hill. You can see the Grenache is still very green and vigorous. That's because there's an extra drip hose, so it's gotten more water. It's not, you can really see where the vineyard is stressed. Like the Petit Verdot on the right-hand side going down the hill is stressed because it was nearly flamed out from the fire. So that all has to be replanted. But at any rate, this is our good evening. I hope you come see us out at Howell Mountain. And I hope it is truffle season, that life is short. And if you get anywhere near Sausalito, my home restaurant, Poggio, one of my favorite places in the world, they have this homemade pasta. In front is the tagine, which is 32 yolks per kilogram of pasta. And in the back is that incredible giant raviolo with a quail egg and sage butter inside. If you ever get a chance to do that, you have to go to Poggio in the first couple of weeks of November or wherever and tell them to shave that white truffle. I was telling these two today, I was telling Jamie and Scott that there was a gentleman in there, just a table for one. And at Poggio, they do 5 grams of truffle is about $70, which is a great deal. And he said he had the same two dishes out, and he had a, $675 bottle of Bruno Giacosa, whatever it was, 2005 Barolo on the table. And he said, "Can I just get 50 grams on these two?" So at some point in my life, if you all just will buy a little more wine, I will be able to go, instead of just getting 5 grams per dish, I'll be able to get 25 grams per dish. But Jamie, what can I tell you, girl? I just love you. You're the best, and we are gonna miss you. But you're still gonna, you're still gonna be here.
Still gonna be around, Elton.
You're still gonna be
Can't get rid
here.
of me. I love you both too. Cheers.
Love you, Jamie.
Love you, Jamie. And Scott is the future of Robert Craig and your conduit to the good times. We're lucky to have so much talent always in this house. And to everybody here, what can I tell you but to how much I've appreciated your support through the toughest time our business has had over the last 24 months, and things are coming back, and Chubb is finally paid, and we're doing well, and that's thanks to your support, your love, and what can I say, from all of my partners in Canada and New York. Marianne, thanks for signing those documents. What can I tell you? It's been fantastic, and so I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll be back sometime in December. We'll let you know the next dates, or maybe early January, depending on when I can get my stuff together. But we'll do Cabernet next time. But I hope you enjoyed these wines, and please come out and see us in the Napa Valley.
Absolutely.
Cheers,
All the love, everybody.
Happy
All the love.
Thanksgiving.
All the love. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.